siasi wonani vede nela ta asia jon fenetsi idiko dete fenshua yendade ni ajon defenetsi senoti Nizonanete senoti sidajidanete nizonanete
Tabi yok Allah bezeni kontinüsi rakavant ende. Tabi yok Allah bezeni kontinüsi rakavant ende. Seizu sinuitini dagamari suri tende kainet nuitin kadi wik yezu na chwe dainla. Seizu sinuitini dutsen gowaten karinti. Tabi yok Allah bezeni kontinüsi rakavant ende. Tabi yok Allah bezeni kontinüsi rakavant ende. Masi.
Please be seated. Colleagues, good afternoon. Welcome back to the House. It's great to be here. I'd like to thank the interpreters, Sarah Cleary, Mary Jane Kazon, for opening this session, a wonderful song performance in the Deni Shati and opening blessing in the Deni Kadeh. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to welcome our pages and our interpreters back to the chamber. We are grateful for their hard work and dedication. We couldn't do this without them. Colleagues, remember to speak slowly and clearly so our interpreters can do their job. Although we have not sat together in this chamber since March, I know you've been busy with your ongoing work of committee, government, and representing your constituents. Our work goes on when we are not sitting. From April 29th to May 1st, we hosted our 21st Youth Parliament. Folks, it was a great time. I was impressed with our young MLAs and proud of the work they did during the short time here. These youth from across our territories came together in the Assembly for 3 days to learn about consensus government and debate in this very chamber important issues important to them, their peers, and their community. Colleagues, please join me in thanking and congratulating our youth MLAs for a job well done. Thank you to the staff involved in our 21st Youth Parliament. A lot of work goes into planning and delivering this event, and they should be recognized for their effort. Please join me in thanking our staff for planning and delivering this program for our youth. Finally, thank you for making our Youth Parliament program a success. Many of you volunteered as pages for modeling sessions and met with your youth representatives during the program. It means a lot to the youth and the program. Thank you. Colleagues, earlier this month on May 5th, we marked the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands by Canadian forces. The domes of this Legislative Assembly building were lit orange to recognize this important milestone. In 1945, Canadian forces played a critical role in freeing the Dutch people from Nazi occupation, ensuring harsh conditions and furious combat to push back German forces. More than 7,600 Canadian soldiers lost their life during this campaign. a solemn reminder of the high cost of freedom. This anniversary serves as a powerful opportunity to honor the courage and the dedication of those who serve and to reflect on Canadian legacy as a defender of peace and justice on the world stage. As a symbol and reminder of sacrifice of the Northwest Territories residents during the Second World War, Métis Sash of Private Edward Powers, an Indigenous veteran of the Second World War and father of our former Sergeant-at-Arms, Floyd Powers, will sit in the chambers as a gift from the Powers family. I thank him very much for this honor. At the appropriate time today, I will table a list of the deceased veterans of the World War or Second World War from or with connection to the Northwest Territories. Colleagues, I received the following correspondence from the Commissioner of the Northwest Territories, the Honourable Gerald W. Kissoon. It states, "Dear Mr. Speaker, I wish to advise that I recommend to the Legislative Assembly of the Northwest Territories the passage of the Supplementary Appropriation Act, Operation Expenditure and Borrowing Authorization Number 1, 2025-2026, Supplementary Appropriation Act, Infrastructure Expenditures Number 1, 2025-2026, during the May sitting of the first session of the 20th Legislative Assembly. Yours truly, Gerald W. Kissoon." Colleagues, let's get back down to business. Minister's statements. Mr. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the 20th Legislative Assembly is nearing its midpoint, a natural time to reflect, recalibrate, and refocus. Over the past year and a half, we've worked hard to build the foundation for what lies ahead. We have established strong working relationships across the House, set shared priorities, and begun the important and essential work of implementing the commitments in our mandate. These early steps were about alignment, ensuring that the work of government reflects the realities, needs, and aspirations of Northerners. The challenges before us are significant. Climate emergencies are becoming more frequent and more destructive. The rising cost of living continues to strain families, businesses, and government fiscal capacity. Our health and social services system is under pressure. As both a public health and public safety issue, communities are at risk of drug and gang activity, compromising the safety of residents and families. The housing and infrastructure deficits in our territory remain one of the greatest barriers to long-term growth and resilience. But, Mr. Speaker, we are not standing still. We have made deliberate decisions to position this government to act and deliver. Earlier this spring, we implemented a series of strategic changes to cabinet portfolios and senior management. These adjustments were designed not only to rebalance workloads, but to strengthen alignment between political leadership and the work we had been asked to carry forward. These were not just routine changes, they were about putting the right people in the right roles to get results. We have also worked to strengthen collaboration with regular members. The newly created Small and Remote Communities Committee of Cabinet will bring the perspectives from small community MLAs directly into the Cabinet decision-making process. This collaboration will make our work stronger and more responsive to the needs of all residents. Mr. Speaker, the groundwork has been laid, our direction is clear, and the work to deliver on the mandate of the Government of the Northwest Territories is moving forward with purpose. In our healthcare system, we are taking focused steps to fix what is not working and strengthen what is, with the goal of ensuring healthy people and communities across the territory. Through the Healthcare System Sustainability Unit, we have launched a territory-wide review of programs and services, one that looks not just at what is being delivered, but at how it's being delivered, what it costs, and what we can do better. This is foundational work. It is the first time we've attempted to build a comprehensive inventory of health and social services across the territory, along with historical spending trends. This will help us identify pressure points, inefficiencies, and opportunities for change, and will inform the decisions we make in the months and years ahead. At Stanton Territorial Hospital, a new emergency department staffing model is being rolled out to improve coverage, reduce burnout, and create a more stable work environment for physicians. The model was co-designed with frontline staff and introduces additional dedicated physician shifts to improve flexibility in care. This will help with recruitment as well as retention and we expect to see real benefits for both staff and patients. Mr. Speaker, in December 2024, we appointed a public administrator to help address the evolving and complex needs of the current health and social services system. The public administrator has released his work plan, focusing on improving day-to-day operations across the system. That work starts with things like scheduling, staff support, and accountability for frontline management. These are things that may not make headlines, but they're critical. They help keep services running, reduce turnover, and ensure that our health and social services system remains focused on care. One of the more exciting long-term projects is focused on integrated service delivery through the Governance and Service Integration Unit. The Governance and Service Integration Unit steers the GNWT's efforts to improve person-centered service delivery across the NWT. With an initial focus on homelessness and family preservation, the unit will establish 5 regional integrated service delivery sites in Yellowknife, Fort Simpson, Inuvik, Hay River, and Betchico. Teams in these communities will coordinate support across sectors such as housing, mental health, income assistance, and child and family services. Central to this work is wraparound training offered to the GNWT, Indigenous governments, and non-governmental organizations designed to create collaborative, holistic support plans for individuals with complex needs. The new Governance and Service Integration Unit also plays a key coordinating role in anti-poverty and food security initiatives that leads the GNWT's response to strengthening the nonprofit and charitable sector. Its work is supported by approximately $5.7 million in federal funding through 2028, including funding from Public Safety Canada, Gender-Based Violence, and Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada. Additionally, the unit manages the Anti-Poverty Fund and the Non-Government Organization Stabilization Fund, supporting community-based solutions and capacity building across the nonprofit sector. Engagement, partnership, and breaking down barriers are the core of Governance and Service Integration Unit's mission to improve access to services and outcomes for residents across the territory. Mr. Speaker, we continue to deliver more homes for Northerners. Since the start of this Legislative Assembly, 81 new units have been completed, with 211 more underway or in the planning stages, including new incremental public housing units, seniors duplexes, and replacement units tailored to local needs across the territory. Over the life of this government, we're planning to deliver a total of 292 new housing units across the territory. In Yellowknife, 2 new transitional housing projects are moving forward. One, a partnership with the Salvation Army, will soon open its doors to individuals in their addiction recovery. A similar facility is expected to open in Inuvik later this year. The second project is a temporary transitional housing facility near the Yellowknife Airport that will provide supportive housing for up to 25 individuals experiencing homelessness. With on-site staff, wraparound supports, and a focus on safety and healing, it will help bridge the gap between emergency shelters and longer-term housing options. This and other similar projects will help our goals to break down barriers and build trust with vulnerable populations. This spring, construction is beginning on a number of additional units, including a 50-unit mass timber building in Yellowknife and a hybrid modular stick build in Delaney. These projects reflect both innovation and a community-driven approach. Mr. Speaker, local housing organizations remain essential partners in this work, supporting tenant safety and day-to-day operations in our communities. Through collaboration with regular members, an additional $41.6 million has been committed to housing NWT this year, bringing the total planned investment to more than $50 million. This work is about more than buildings. It's about stability, health, and opportunity, and we are moving forward with urgency and partnership. Mr. Speaker, floods and wildfires are no longer rare events in the Northwest Territories. They have become a regular part of life for many communities, and their impacts are being felt more often and more severely. We have been taking decisive steps to ensure that we are ready for emergencies. To help strengthen our emergency preparedness and response, 2 independent reviews were launched following 2023's wildfire season. One focused on wildfire management, and the other on broader emergency operations, including evacuations and public safety. Earlier this month, we received the broader after-action review focused on emergency management and community evacuations. It provides a detailed assessment of what worked and what did not, and identifies clear opportunities to improve coordination, communication, and readiness. A formal response to the after-action review will be tabled later this year, but operational improvements are already being made. We updated the NWT emergency plan by clarifying roles and responsibilities to ensure that emergency agencies, Indigenous governments, and the territorial government can work together in a coordinated and collaborative fashion from the outset of an emergency. We launched new training to support incident command capacity, relaunched the Be Ready campaign to support community-level preparedness, and we're offering fire smarting assessments across the territory. This is about continuous learning and continuous improvement, and making sure that when the next emergency comes, we are better equipped to respond. We're also supporting climate resilience in the NWT's 4 coastal communities, Tuktoyaktuk, Paulatuk, Sax Harbor, and Nuluhuktuk, in partnership with Natural Resources Canada's Climate Resilient Coastal Communities program. These 4 communities face growing risks from coastal erosion, sea level rise, storm surges, and permafrost thaw due to climate change. The funding includes more than $12 million for 13 projects in the north and across Canada to help communities develop and implement their own climate adaptation measures, including planned relocation efforts. We will work with community governments to ensure strategies are community-led, practical, and support long-term climate resilience. In this environment of growing uncertainty and rapid change, another serious threat continues to develop, not just in the NWT, but internationally: the rise of drug trafficking and substance use. Social isolation, lack of opportunity, and limited access to services, often exacerbated by climate-driven disruptions, have made some communities more susceptible to the harmful impacts of drugs and organized crime. In response, protecting community safety has become not just a matter of policing, but a critical part of building resilience. As this issue continues to grow, we and our partners have adapted our response, education and supports to make sure we have safe communities for Northerners and support for healing. Our efforts focus on community-based programs, harm reduction, enforcement, and restorative justice. The Department of Health and Social Services works with schools, non-government organizations, and community organizations to deliver prevention education on the risks of drug use, safe consumption messaging, and access to mental health supports, as well as providing harm reduction initiatives, such as the access to naloxone kits to treat opioid overdoses. For community members dealing with addictions and trauma, the Mental Wellness and Addictions Recovery Fund offers $3 million a year to communities, Indigenous governments, and Indigenous organizations for community-based programming tailored to the cultural and local needs and land-based healing initiatives that include traditional knowledge and practices. Facility-based addictions treatment is also available to help residents access treatment outside of the territory if needed, as well as dedicated aftercare, including counseling and peer support for people returning from treatment. Through the RCMP and the Department of Justice, the GNWT actively supports drug enforcement efforts. This past February, the RCMP executed the largest drug and cash seizure in NWT history, confiscating nearly 5 kilograms of cocaine and over $360,000 in cash. This operation significantly disrupted criminal networks operating in the territory. We established a territorial crime reduction unit, deployed the first full-time emergency response team in the NWT, and are developing new legislation to empower law enforcement to shut down drug houses, seize assets from traffickers, and continue to disrupt drug networks to protect communities and keep residents safe in their own homes. We will also continue to work across jurisdictions, both within the territory and nationally, to fight the problem. Mr. Speaker, we know that long-term prosperity and resilience in the Northwest Territories depend on getting infrastructure right and on working with Indigenous governments in Canada to make meaningful progress. This is why we continue to advance major projects like the Mackenzie Valley Highway, the Tulsan Hydroelectric Expansion, and the Slave Geological Province Corridor. These are long-term investments in connectivity, energy security, and economic development that will create new opportunities for Northerners and are critical to strengthening the North's role as a pivotal point in Canada's future. To help drive this work forward, we have created a new ministerial portfolio focused on strategic infrastructure, energy, and supply chains. The partnerships behind these nation-building projects, including with Indigenous governments and the federal government, remain central to our approach, and we will continue to advocate strongly for the funding and approvals needed to move them ahead. We have taken practical steps to adapt existing systems. This year's winter fuel resupply was one of the most complex in recent memory, with water levels forcing major rerouting. Thanks to strong coordination across government, industry, and communities, over 9.6 million liters of fuel was safely delivered on time to 8 communities. We also modernized the Public Utility Board's mandate to better support community-driven renewable energy, improve fairness in the system, and lay the groundwork for long-term affordability and sustainability. Mr. Speaker, during a period of global uncertainty, we have taken targeted steps to protect the territory's economy. Short-term relief for the diamond sector is helping maintain jobs, sustain local businesses, and support Indigenous contracting at a time of significant market disruption. When the federal government eliminated the consumer carbon tax, we moved quickly to align territorial policy, delivering immediate relief for residents while continuing to advance our 2030 energy strategy and long-term climate adaptation work. We are also working to strengthen the foundations of our economy. The Northwest Territories is chairing the Committee on Internal Trade, helping lead national efforts to reduce trade barriers and unlock economic opportunity across Canada. We are doing this while remaining steadfast on the need to uphold economic and modern treaty commitments and support our developing economy. Mr. Speaker, we also have a great opportunity in the wake of the recent federal election. After nearly 2 decades, the NWT has a minister in cabinet, and for the first time ever, the Prime Minister is someone born in our territory. There's a renewed sense that Canada is paying closer attention to the Arctic and the North, not just as a region in need, but as strategically essential to the success of our nation. This attention brings with it opportunities to collaborate in meaningful ways on the challenges we face, whether building the economy, adapting to climate change, strengthening community wellness and resilience, or highlighting Canada's security and sovereignty. We welcome this focus and are ready to work with Canada and all of our partners to build a Northwest Territories that is stronger, safer, and more productive for Northerners and contributes to the Canadian Federation. As we look ahead, our focus remains clear. We will continue working and building with regular members, Indigenous governments, community leaders, and residents to advance the priorities in our mandate: more homes, better healthcare, stronger emergency response, cleaner energy, safer communities, and a resilient, sustainable economy that works for Northerners. This is the time to move from strategy to implementation, from building trust to delivering results. That is what we intend to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Minister statements. Minister statements. Member statements. Member from Rangeley. Rangeley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Yellowknife's own, the Honourable Rebecca Alty, on her election to the House of Commons, and further on her appointment to the Privy Council as Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations. Rebecca was born and raised in Yellowknife in Chief Dry Geese Territory in the Acacho region. After high school, she completed a diploma in film and video at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, followed by a degree in communication studies from the University of Calgary. In 2018, she was elected as 15th Mayor of Yellowknife, following 2 terms as a City Councillor. Ms. Alty joins a rather exclusive club of Northern ministers and is only the 2nd from the Northwest Territories, following in the footsteps of the great Ethel Blondin Andrew, who was Minister of State from 2003 to 2006.
So many people from the North who are now at the most important post in the country. We would like to thank Prime Minister Fort Carney, who is originally from Fort Smith. He clearly demonstrated his engagement with the North by naming the Honorable Paqui Belanger, the Honorable Lemmy Bumasti.
And underutilized by Ottawa. But these appointments send a clear message that that is going to change. The NWT holds the promise of Canada's future, the Grays Bay Slave Geological Province Strategic Corridor, critical minerals, and our untapped energy potential in natural gas, offshore oil, hydroelectricity, and geothermal resources. We can be the center of North America's strategic defense and ensure Arctic sovereignty for all Canadians in the tradition of Indigenous people who have called this land home since time immemorial. Mr. Speaker, the new federal cabinet and its priorities represent a bright future for the Northwest Territories, with growth and security for our people. I know that my friend, Rebecca Alty, will make good on this opportunity and be the voice of the NWT on the national and international stage. Congratulations, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, member from Range Lake. Member statements. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the first day of our last sitting in February, I told the trans and non-binary community that I love and support you. As we are about to enter Pride season, I stand today to say again that you are loved, valued, and deserve safety and equity. Mr. Speaker, Pride is a protest. Again and again, we protest until safety and equity for everyone is achieved. On May 3rd, the Premier released a statement with his territorial colleagues that they, quote, discussed the alarming increase in transphobic policies based on hate and ignorance being passed internationally, stripping transgender and gender non-conforming people of their fundamental rights to self-expression. All three territories continue to take a strong stance to support the 2S LGBTQIA+ community and are committed to ensuring all Northerners feel seen, safe, and supported, end quote. In my role as regular member, I have the power of words and influence. And so today I ask this cabinet to use their active power to effect strong change and support our 2S LGBTQIA+ community through real action. This means we must provide safe options for gender-affirming healthcare out of territory. It also means that the GNWT must actively listen to experts in our community, especially the Northern Mosaic Network, to create real and lasting change through meaningful collaboration. I invite all members to meet with folks outside the Assembly rallying for safe and accessible trans health care. I will have questions from the Minister of Health and Social Services at the appropriate time.
Thank you, member from Great Slave. Member statements. Member from Moofy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, diin nawawak igatasi naidi nizinlehani kunek adzahunta.
But there are a lot of people that are saying they're destroying a lot of young people, and they're destroying. And there are a lot of young people that are suffering due to drugs. There are a lot of things that had been said. Yeah, not only in my community, but throughout the territories. A lot of us, there are a lot of changes into our lifestyle due to drugs.
It's out of control in NWT. Mr. Speaker, we must address the drug crisis in our communities. 2 weeks ago, the Dene National Chief said we are, quote, at the crossroads in an ongoing drug crisis. Mr. Speaker, I feel we need to recognize that this recent gun and drug-related crime really is a crisis. As a parent and grandparent, I care deeply about the well-being of our people, especially our youth. They are our future leaders who will shape our communities going forward. Mr. Speaker, this drug crisis is tearing people apart. It is heartbreaking to see the toll crack cocaine and fentanyl are taking on our youth. 2 people are facing firearm and drug trafficking charges in the Sahtu. Last month, a 21-year-old received a 5-year prison sentence for selling cocaine in Yellowknife. Last week, a 22-year-old was arrested for a murder that happened in the Detroit in March. Yesterday, media reported that a 12-year-old was arrested in Mackenzie Delta after a shooting. Mr. Speaker, our children are using drugs at younger ages, for example, 10 years old, and this will have a terrible impact on their future. Mr. Speaker, my constituents are calling for action. They are asking others to report drug dealers and people involved in the drug trade. Residents are beginning to face legal consequences. We need to ensure we have the resources to meet the challenges ahead. Mr. Speaker, addiction is also disease, and while we must protect our communities, we need to show compassion. Mr. Speaker, can I have unanimous consent to conclude my statement?
Member for Mophie. Member for Mophie is asking unanimous consent to conclude her statement. Seeing no nays, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have heard recently that the amount of time for legal aid clinics and services have been reduced. Our young people are entering the system, and we need to be prepared. I will have a question for the Minister of Justice at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Mophie. Member statements. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, investing in our Arctic Road to Resources, Mr. Speaker, it's the highway north of Yellowknife, is an excellent, if not a major significant economic opportunity for the North and Canada. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the NWT's GDP alone, you'd start to wonder, in this territory, is it trending that people are quietly quitting? Our GDP is shrinking, and things are maybe no one's taken the opportunity to inform or tell the Premier. Mr. Speaker, we're going to need some bold brinkmanship action to get in there, lock down, and get some investment in the North, because as the North starts to shrink and continues to shrink in the direction it's going, you don't have to start to see the stark difference between when you look east or west, when you see Nunavut and Yukon, as their economies continue to grow year over year, because it starts to make you wonder what's happening and where's the call for urgency. Mr. Speaker, frankly, the only growth really we see in the Northwest Territories in our GDP is the public administration. And in lay terms, that's for the public to know what that means is basically that means government with more government on top of government, Mr. Speaker. Government's busting at the seams. It's their best sector, Mr. Speaker, but it all isn't lost. There's hope on the horizon. Mr. Speaker, recently Canada has elected a new Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, that Prime Minister made a particularly interesting statement. I'll say it. He said, build big, build bold, and build now, Mr. Speaker. So there's the message I'm sending to our Premier. So, Mr. Premier, while you're traveling to the First Minister's junket in 2 weeks from now, and in between the wine, the cheese, and those fancy, cute little tiny crackers, take a moment and ask the Prime Minister to help you build big, build bold, build now. We have partners here in the Yellowknife region. The Tulicho government, the Yellowknives, they want to work together to build that road north to the Bathurst port, because we could build big, bold, and now, and that will help stimulate this economy. Mr. Speaker, subjects such as the Arctic Road to Resources I think could be good. Accelerating the Mackenzie Valley Highway is critical, and if Tolston isn't going to work, it's time we pull it off the table and say let's run a power line north from Alberta, because we have to start making some good choices. So I implore the Premier, do not be a Where's Waldo, be aggressive, be big, be bold, and do it now, because we can't wait any longer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member from Yellowknife Centre. Member statements. Member from the Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hope all colleagues is having an enjoyable spring. Mr. Speaker, I took the opportunity as recently as this past week where my wife and I drove through Fort St. John, BC, home to the Site C Hydro Dam facility, a stunning and massive structure. This is also one of 3 facilities on the same Peace River. These are controlled waterways for commercial returns. Mr. Speaker, our journey continued to include sites at the Petito Liard River Junction. Again, we witness another site of low water conditions. Mr. Speaker, these two areas are the head watersheds of the Mackenzie River and the Liard, with warmer climate conditions, controlling waterways, downstream residents in my area. These invested conditions is not only alarming, concerning, but more importantly, what's in store of our future generations on sustainability. Mr. Speaker, I support the MTF staff and the department for taking active measures to support a resupply point at Dooley Crossing. However, challenges remain within the waterways if sailing conditions decisions are confirmed. Mr. Speaker, mid-summer of 2023, the marine vessel Vic Ingram punctured a hole crossing the 12-mile ridge above Toledo. The reef extreme caution is required when supporting the approved sailing decision. It will be a catastrophic environmental nightmare should a fuel spill occur, where remoteness and response plans personnel are not readily available in an immediate reach. In closing, Mr. Speaker, my ultimate and remain support is hire north and build the Mackenzie Valley Highway, Wrigley to Norman Wells. We must think strategically as we transition from regulatory assessment, funding, permitting, construction during the remaining term of our Assembly. Mussy.
Thank you, member from the Sawtoo. Member statements. Member from Yellowknife North.
Mr. Speaker, the recent Earth Day announcement of $15 million in surprise subsidies to the 3 operating diamond mines has been bothering me. I certainly don't dispute that the mines employ a lot of Northerners and that Indigenous and Northern businesses rely significantly on contracts with the diamond mines. What bothers me is that the subsidies are based on wishful thinking. They're not designed to actually accomplish anything meaningful when it comes to jobs or our economy. We're not getting any guarantees in return for the $15 million, besides nice but empty words like relationships and partnerships. They're not even offering best efforts, but commercially reasonable efforts to maintain operations. Basically, they'll do what they were going to do anyway. We don't have any independent economic analysis that shows even the probability that this token gesture will result in one more Northerner being hired, or that a mine will stay open for 1 day longer than it would have without these subsidies. $15 million in public funds are pretty small potatoes for those diamond mine operations, but they could mean a lot if this government instead invested that money directly in our people, in housing or education or mental health care, or even in energy infrastructure projects to support future economic opportunities. Those are the investments required to build up our economic foundation, not desperately throwing money at the mines that are already on their way out the door in the hope that will slow them down on their way out. Was this so-called crisis so impossible to predict or plan for? Global mineral prices famously rise and crash on a regular basis. We've known for many years these mines are reaching the end of their life cycles, when we should expect falling profits and tighter margins. We can and should be creating transparent policy for what to do in these frequent situations. Should the government always subsidize a mine if it threatens to close? If so, for how long should we subsidize a failing operation? What proof do we need to see that a closure threat is real? Is there a minimum rate of return? How many jobs should be at stake to justify a subsidy? What should be the consequence if a company takes the money and shuts down the very next day? Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to conclude my statement.
Member from Yellowknife North. Member from Yellowknife North is seeking unanimous consent to conclude her statement. Hearing none, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues. Finally, let's plan properly and invest in economic development based on sound evidence rather than spending reactively based on fear and wishful thinking. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife North. Member statements. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the NWT, a number of healthcare professions are regulated under the Health and Social Services Professions Act. Psychologists were regulated under this act in 2022, for example. Meanwhile, counseling and psychotherapy are not yet a regulated profession in the NWT, and I have been approached by practitioners with concerns about the lack of a regulatory body for these professions here. Anyone in the NWT can currently offer counseling or psychotherapy services without any formal education or training, as long as they are not claiming to be a psychologist or social worker. Trained counseling therapists may register with the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, but registration with the CCPA is not mandatory, it's voluntary. This is potentially a significant issue with severe impacts on public safety, Mr. Speaker. Regulation protects the public. A regulatory body ensures that practitioners are held to high standards, promoting safe, ethical, and evidence-based practices. When harm does occur currently, there is no avenue to report someone for unethical or dangerous care if they are not a voluntary association or regulatory body member. Unregulated, untrained individuals providing counseling care may worsen things for those already in crisis. Harm can occur due to negligence, malpractice, ethical violations, or incompetence. Regulation helps mitigate these risks by ensuring that only qualified professionals provide care and that harmful practices are addressed. We expect registered nurses and physicians to maintain up-to-date licensing, ensuring their ability to provide safe care. Why should we not hold mental health professions to the same standards? Or similar standards, Mr. Speaker. I want to highlight that valuable education and training are not limited to colonial systems, and it is crucial that any regulatory framework developed for the NWT takes this into account. Currently, the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario has a policy titled the Indigenous Pathway Policy, which aims to support the registration of appropriately qualified Indigenous practitioners of psychotherapy through consultation and collaboration with Indigenous communities. The CRPO also recognizes that knowledge keepers, elders, and practitioners of Indigenous traditional healing practices can provide supervision to registrants, recognizing that supervision from... Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to conclude my statement. Thank you.
Member from Frame Lake. Member from Frame Lake is seeking unanimous consent to conclude his statement. Seeing no nays, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, the CRPO also recognizes that knowledge keepers, elders, and practitioners of Indigenous traditional healing practices can provide supervision to registrants, recognizing that supervision from non-colonial educated and trained individuals has value. Similar policies would be essential if regulation were achieved in the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll have questions for the Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, member from Frame Lake. Member statements. Member from the Deitcho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to discuss Enterprise being put under administration. Enterprise is still recovering from the 2023 wildfires, which destroyed homes and businesses and displaced most of its residents. Mr. Speaker, there have been no clear plans since the fires. Enterprise lost people on its council in early 2024, and media reported widespread lack of confidence. On May 7, 2025, the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs made an order declaring the hamlet of Enterprise be placed under administration due to the governance, financial, and operational challenges. Mr. Speaker, Section 159 of the Territorial Hamlets Act allows the Minister to declare a hamlet subject to administration and appoint a municipal administrator. This administrator can exercise the powers and perform the duties of a council under the Act. As a result, council is deemed to have resigned and the office remains vacant until a new election is held. Mr. Speaker, the Minister's orders effectively relieve the Mayor and all members of the council of their duties. This measure was considered necessary to stabilize operations, ensure good governance, and address the challenges faced by the community, according to the press release. Mr. Speaker, residents need to know the next steps. Some residents are still living in Hay River. They want to know when Enterprise will be move-in ready. My constituents are asking what plans are in place for delivering services and programs on behalf of Enterprise. Now that council has been dissolved, when will then an election be held? I will have questions for the minister at the appropriate time. Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from the Date Show. Member statements. Member from Tuna-Day-Willity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my constituents of Tuna-Day-Willity, following the spring federal election with great anticipation, a sentiment echoed throughout this assembly. For some time, there has been serious uncertainty about how outcomes of the federal election could affect our efforts to tackle the many challenges facing our territory, in particular the ongoing housing crisis. The result is now clear. Mr. Carney and the Liberal Party have returned to office, promising a new government agency dedicated to building 500,000 new homes a year across the country. While this plan is ambitious, it is not without precedent. For decades, the federal government built homes across Canada and here in the Northwest Territories. Those efforts made real progress until the mid-1990s. Many people in the north, in the small communities, are still living in those homes today. Unfortunately, the beginning of our modern housing crisis can be tracked back to the moment of federal government transferred housing responsibility to the territorial government. The NWT has since fallen behind by hundreds of homes a year, or 7,500 in total, approximately, as simply do not have the resources to keep up. Public housing waitlists grew, vacancy rates plummet, and older homes slip into disrepair. We are now at a turning point, but this moment is about more than just catching up on the housing shortages. It's about ensuring we never face a crisis like this again, and that won't happen under Indigenous housing happen until Indigenous housing is led by Indigenous governments. Only then truly understand the unique needs of their communities. They have community members ready to design policies, administer programs, and construct and maintain homes. We need to give them the authority and resources to get started. My constituents can't wait any longer for the GNWT to move beyond its failing policies and commit to new Indigenous-led housing consensus. A strong first step would be to revisit the successful historic initiative by reinstating the old HAP program, Home Ownership Assistance Program, Home Improvement Programs, Senior Assistant Home Assistance Program, and the Emergency Repair Program. Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to conclude my member statement. Thank you.
Member from Tuna-Day-Willity. Member from Tuna-Day-Willity seeking unanimous consent to conclude his statement. Hearing no nays, you may conclude your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. The Emergency Repair Program, but at this time, with the funding flowing directly to the Indigenous governments, along with the funding for public housing and CMC operation and maintenance funds. My communities and I are eager to hear from firm commitments in that direction, because this work can't wait any longer. I would have questions for the Premier at the appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from Tuna-Day-Willity. Member statements. Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to offer my sincere condolences to all who have lost loved ones over the last few months. Grief is uncomfortable and difficult, especially in trying times. I rise today to speak about Nunavut, a riding and constituency that elected me to represent and advocate for those that live in the most remote communities in the Northwest Territories. Seeing people travel on the land with the return of spring and warmer weather brings me joy and hope, as many families are harvesting geese and catching fish, coming home with smiling faces and nice-looking tans. Communities remain resilient as many families continue to face poverty and unaffordability with limited access to healthcare and education systems. I think we all have a good idea of what we need, including a locally skilled labor market, an engaged and thriving workforce, improved housing, and more frontline services with vibrant schools and health centers. The work we do, the discussions we have, the questions we ask, our priorities. This is our vision, Mr. Speaker, a better territory than what we started this 20th Assembly with. Our territory is seeing a surge of illegal activity, including amplified heavy drug activity and health centers overrun with preventative accidents and illnesses. What can we do? First, we need to speak the truth for our children and our grandchildren. We need healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy parents saying no more. We must be more engaged in our communities, attend events and meetings, ask questions, volunteer, and run for elected office. I continue to trust our Premier, Cabinet, and I trust regular members to lead and act in the best interest of this territory. But again, we need to remind ourselves, we need to truly do what's best for this territory. As we begin this session, let's think about it. Koe Naini, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member from Nunavut. Member statements. Colleagues, Dr. Earl Leslie Covert passed away peacefully at Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge on Saturday, May 3rd, 2025, at the age of 86 years old. His family, while spread across Canada, has grown to include 13 great-grandchildren who are all under the age of 9 years old. While those are blood-related relations left behind, there are dozens of people and family who call him father, grandfather, and a friend. He was preceded by his wife, Audrey, in 2016. Dr. Covert was born June 21st, 1938 in Ottawa, graduating Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and moved immediately to Northwest Territories, where he began serving the Lord as a doctor and leader in the church community. The legacy he leaves behind includes bringing hundreds of babies into the world, flying into remote communities to serve both the Lord and the medical field in any capacity he was able. He raised a large family and left behind a church family at Parle, Lethbridge. While not blood, are a true family as any man could ask. College, Dr. Covert was a man who touched the many lives of many people. He served his community of Hay River, Clodedale, Lethbridge area as a doctor for over 50 years. In many years, he served his community. He donated his time, his energy, and his love to anyone that he met, serving in the streets alive with Foot Friday and the Gildan and Parallel Lethbridge. He was lovingly known as Parallel as the Doc, where he served for many years as a door greeter and voice of wisdom. Colleagues, I was fortunate to have him as a family doctor growing up in Hay River. It is not often when you have a doctor who brings you into the world and then has the opportunity to bring your children into the world. This happened with me and my younger sister. I remember the last time we had a conversation about a potential operation. As we were chatting about the various options, I asked him how long he knew me, and he said, "All your life, young man." Then he thought about the question further and said, "We'll come up with a different plan." When we were looking at when you look at Dr. Covert's life, there are countless layers of people he has affected on people which some we still don't fully know. Yet what is known is that he's touched so many lives in such a positive way that his passing has left a hole in hearts of many. His last wish, final goal is to see the Lord Jesus Christ praised and the gospel spread to anyone with ears to hear. I would like to thank his grandson, Dallas Covert, who helped with this part of the celebration of life. However, being reflective of time, I'd like the rest of this statement be deemed as read and printed in Hansard. This includes other parts of the obituary written by his grandson, by his daughter, and son-in-law. He will be sadly missed. Member statements. Member from Nunavut Boot Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with the permission of the Moses family to remember the late Winston Moses, respected elder and friend to all in the town of Inuvik. Winston's family said the world got a little brighter when their dad, grandfather, uncle, and friend, Winston John Moses, was born on April 6, 1944 in Old Crow, Yukon. In his early years, Winston was raised by his sister Mary Lazarus Charlie and his godparents Ellen and Robert Bruce Sr. Winston attended residential school in Old Crow, Aklavik, and then Inuvik. He later attended vocational school in Whitehorse and Fort Smith. In 1974, while working in Inuvik, Winston met the love of his life, Martha Pascal of Fort McPherson. After many weekend visits to Fort McPherson to visit Martha, he brought her home to Old Crow, where they married on May 7, 1975. The young couple moved to Inuvik in 1978 and together raised 6 children. Mr. Speaker, one of his children is his son, Alfred Moses, who many in this building will recognize that name and remember, and who sadly passed away at the age of 45 in 2022. Alfred was elected to the Legislative Assembly here in 2011 and represented the electoral district of Boot Lake until his retirement from politics in 2019. Winston and Martha enjoyed picking berries, setting snares and going for drives on the highway, and enjoyed visiting relatives in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. When Martha could no longer go berry picking or setting snares, he would go out and often come back with full pails of berries or a few rabbits just for her. Always taking care of his wife and family like the good man that he was. Winston was known for walking everywhere with a hello or a good day, and anyone who been in Inuvik or lives in Inuvik would see Winston walking up and down the hill, never accepting a ride, just waving and saying hello. To everyone he crossed paths with, he was a humble man who's always had kind words to share. In his spare time, he enjoyed sharing his music skills in guitar or harmonica. He would often perform in talent shows. When he attended the Gwich'in Gathering in Old Crow in 2022, he had entered almost every contest they had and won first place in many of them, including in a jigging contest and in his harmonica in the talent show. The Gwich'in Nation mourns alongside the Winston family, as they have lost a respected Gwich'in elder and a knowledge holder who was always so willing to teach anyone who wanted to learn. Winston lived by example, and we've all seen his traditional values in all that he did. One of his fondest memories was his last trip to Old Crow, where he spent time with his family and going to Crow Flats. He was so glad to be home. He mentioned it being his first time back there in almost 50 years. He sat quietly having tea, shared what he remembered, and appreciated his treasured trip. Masi Cho to the Tetzichi family for taking good care of him during every visit. Mr. Speaker, Winston was special to everyone who knew him. Let us each honor him and all our loved ones who passed before by living the best we can each day, remembering all the teachings and applying them to our daily lives. Let us keep learning and sharing and caring for each other, like Winston did for us. Never forget the sacrifices, hard work ethic, and strong faith that he carried and lived. His legacy will live on through his family, who was always the most important thing in life to him. Thank you for all your work on earth, Winston, and rest in peace in paradise forevermore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Boot Lake. Just beautiful celebration of life of a gentleman that was well known across the Northwest Territories. My condolences go out to the family and his friends. Member statements. Member statements. Returns to oral questions. Returns to oral questions. Mr. Premier.
Working on it.
Mr. Speaker, I have a return to oral question asked by the member for Yellowknife Centre on February 25th, 2025, regarding the Senior Envoy to the Government of Canada position. The Senior Envoy position is one position within the Premier's office and is remunerated at the salary range of the Principal Secretary position, which is considered a Deputy Head 3. As of April 1st, 2025, the salary of a Deputy Head 3 position is from $261,474 to $326,842. Salary ranges for the Government of the Northwest Territories employees are available publicly on the Department of Finance website. As of April 1st, 2025, the 100% maximum range for a Deputy Head 3 position, including benefit entitlements, there is an estimated cost of $440,000 per year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Premier. Returns to oral questions. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I have a return to oral question asked by the member for Range Lake on March 5th, 2025 regarding coverage exemptions for uninsured medical procedures. The member asked if there's anything a doctor can do to convince decision makers that an exception or appeal is warranted if a procedure is not insured. There is a robust process in place to assess appeals or requests for exceptions related to services that are not considered an insured service. From the member's line of questioning, I gather that the process was initiated through a prior approval request. However, the outcome of the request did not satisfy the patient. In accordance with the Medical Care Act, medical care regulations, the Director of Medical Insurance designates a medical advisor who is a physician to review prior approvals request and make recommendation. Depending on the complexity of the case, the file is reviewed by the medical advisor and any additional Department of Health and Social Service staff or other clinicians within the territory, and in consultation with the medical specialist or experts from outside the NWT as needed. The review and recommendation of the medical advisor based on clinical input and aligning with funding of medical services in other jurisdictions in Canada, across Canada, are reviewed by the Director of Medical Insurance, and the decision of the Director is final. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Returns are all questions. Mr. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I have a return to oral question asked by the member for Yellowknife Centre on March 12, 2025, regarding the Senior Envoy to the Government of Canada position. As part of an organizational shift within the Premier's office, the Senior Envoy position was created to strengthen the Government of the Northwest Territories' federal engagement efforts. This role is designed to foster strong relationships with federal political offices in Ottawa while leveraging the renewed national interest in Canada's North. The Senior Envoy serves as a dedicated resource, ensuring that the GNWT's perspectives are effectively conveyed in federal decision-making processes whenever possible. The success of this position will, in part, be measured by the level of engagement and resulting outcomes, including advocacy achievements and policy influences. Relationship building is an integral part of this process, with progress tracked through the establishment of key connections made. Additionally, performance will also be assessed based on tangible outcomes, such as new funding commitments secured and initiatives influenced. Ultimately, these measures reinforce the position's important role in expanding visibility and elevating our government's priorities on the national stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Returns to oral questions. Returns to oral questions. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize my constituent Irene Roth, who is here today in the House, although I can't see her because I am limited on my vision in the House. Thank you very much for being here and enjoy your assembly.
Member from Great Slave. Recognition of visitors in gallery. Member from Rangeley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize my constituent, Mr. Floyd Powder, former Sergeant at Arms here in the Legislative Assembly. Floyd is here to honor Eddie Powder, a WW2 veteran who you spoke of earlier today. And thank you for being here again, Floyd. It's always good to have you in the chamber. Thank you.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Mophi.
Merci, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
I'd like to, yes, he was an armed force, and I know his kids. But his daughter Terry had shared a story about his to show the respect to their late dad. Their kids are here. Marie Douglas, Irene Ross, North Douglas, they're all, and they're also both Martha Sambot, the granddaughter of the late Robert Douglas, who was in. I'd like to show my respect and say thank you to them. Their late dad, Robert Douglas, was in the armed forces, and also Floyd Powder was also here to show the respect, and also he was a sergeant at arms at one point in time, who was also here. But anyways, thank you.
Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise to play an honorable recognition of Robert Bob Douglas, born in Fort Good Hope. And I'm glad to see the family in the gallery and the granddaughter, Tanya Roth, to the family as well. And Mr. Douglas is still talked about in high regard with the efforts he made in contributing to the community at the time there when he was living and working in Fort Good Hope. So I never met the individual, but I hear some remarkable stories, and it gives me pleasure, as said, to pay my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, member from the Sawtooth. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Tabacha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to welcome Shelto Douglas, constituent from Tabacha, to the House today. Shelto is here in honor of Robert Bobby Douglas, World War II veteran from the Royal Canadian Air Force combat. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Tabacha. Recognition of visitors gallery. Member from Yellowknife Center.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize Marie Doyle, who's in the gallery today. She's a Yellowknife Center constituent, and she's a beloved family member of Robert Douglas, a World War II veteran. And just on that note, I want to remind people that as our venture numbers do shrink, we still owe them a debt of great gratitude for the freedoms we all share here today and throughout the world. And Mr. Speaker, separately, I'd like to also acknowledge Shelto Douglas. He is a friend of mine when I was very young, and so I would say I know him well, and I could tell some good stories about that, but we don't have the time today, and I suspect he'd prefer they not be put on the public record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife Center. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member from Decho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to recognize they're kind of members of my family and friends of my family. Marka Simba, I'm married to my cousin from Kikisa. Tanya Roth from Norman Wells, Marie Douglas, North, Irene Shelto, and the family that's there from the late Robert Douglas. Thank you and welcome to the House.
Thank you, member from the Decho. Recognition visitors in gallery. Member from Tuna Day Willowday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also recognize the former Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Floyd Powder. Good to see you here. I also would like to recognize Irene Roth, Marie Douglas, Tanya McCauley, Shelton Douglas, Nord Douglas, and I have an elder there. I just don't know their name, but I just want to say welcome to the House. And Shelto, you look like a politician. So welcome, Masi.
Thank you, member from Tuna Day Willowday. Recognition of visitors gallery. Member from Mofway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to recognize Shelto Douglas in the audience as well. I was given names, but I forgot to mention, I didn't realize he was in the audience, in the gallery. So I would like to recognize Shelto Douglas as well. So thank you.
Thank you, member from Mofway. Recognition of visitors in the gallery. Recognition visitor in the gallery. Welcome, Mr. Powders. It's great to see you here again. If we've missed anyone in the gallery here today, welcome to your chambers. I hope you are enjoying the proceedings. It's always nice to see people in the gallery, and thank you very much for allowing us to represent you here today and for the residents of the Northwest Territories. Recognition of visitors in gallery. Recognition of visitors in gallery. Acknowledgements. Acknowledgements. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife Center.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm excited to ask questions to the Premier regarding his upcoming wonderful trip to Saskatoon. And I'd like to know little details, and hopefully we can share this within the House. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, what is the plan, or what will the Premier be proposing at this First Ministers' Conference with the Prime Minister of Canada that that lines up with the mandate of the NWT, but also some of our major significant infrastructure projects? And lastly, especially noting the tone of the Prime Minister to build and be bold. Thank you.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife Centre. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've had a pretty consistent approach to dealing with the Prime Minister's office. We are advancing our federal priorities. When I meet with the Prime Minister, I speak about the need to settle land claims. That was actually what we talked about the last time that I spoke with him. And then the next thing I know, we have the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations is from the Northwest Territories. So I don't know if that is a coincidence or if they're listening, but I think that's very promising. I speak about things that the Prime Minister is interested in, things like nation-building projects, Slave Geological Province Corridor, Tulsan Hydroelectric expansion, the Mackenzie Valley Highway. I talk about how we work with Indigenous governments in the Northwest Territories, how we have a co-management system that the federal government is actually part of, and they need to be more involved if we want to get things moving forward. So I do my best to put things out there that the Prime Minister can say yes to, and that will stick with them, so that when they go back and they make their decisions, the Northwest Territories is at the front of their mind. Thank you.
Premier. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier in the return to oral questions, the Premier had answered some of my questions with respect to our Ottawa czar. So what advice is he giving us on a political tactic to approach the Prime Minister to find some yeses on our wish list at this particular meeting he's having in Saskatoon? Thank you.
From Yellowknife Centre, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it is political advice that is being given by the senior envoy to the Government of Canada. We don't have any czars in the government that I'm aware of. No positions, at least, named czar. So I work with the senior envoy to, pick his brain on, what he's seen in the past, and get information about past decisions made in Ottawa. Some of that insight that you might not get, through the media or through a briefing note. And so the type of advice that he gives is quality. Thank you.
Mr. Premier, final supplementary. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there was, I think earlier in the return to oral questions, the Premier did cite that he's paid at a Deputy Minister 3 up to $326,000. It was actually more than the Prime Minister gets paid, oddly enough, but out of curiosity. I would hope that, Mr. Speaker, that the Premier could be very specific as to what advice he's getting so he can approach the Prime Minister on these initiatives. He's already listed them. I don't need to go through them. And what type of political advice he's giving the Premier to help work in collaboration to get the national support on our national infrastructure projects in need. Thank you.
From Yellowknife Centre, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I've already answered the member's question. Thanks.
Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have questions for the Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment. So as part of the public briefing this morning, the government's presentation stated that in return for accepting this relief, the diamond mines agreed to several commitments, including to use commercially reasonable efforts to maintain operations until their planned closure dates. So can the minister explain whether the commitment to use commercially reasonable efforts to maintain operations represents any change whatsoever from the status quo, or rather would we always expect businesses to use commercially reasonable efforts in everything that they do? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from Yellowknife North. Minister of ITI.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, certainly in the Northwest Territories, we do always expect businesses to use reasonable efforts, to use local employment, local labor, and to really ensure that collectively and as a community, we're really focused on benefit retention for Northerners. That said, I can't predict what would have happened, but we were in the face of a very difficult decision that some of the diamond mines were facing. We know that globally it is a very difficult market for diamonds right now, and we also know that in the NWT that diamond mines provide a lot of our GDP. They provide upwards of 21%. They provide a lot of funding to businesses. They provide a lot of jobs to Northerners that Northerners rely on. And so what we were investing in were those jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Member from Minister of ITI. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the department explained in the briefing that the property tax relief is a, quote, temporary measure. So does this mean that if profits rebound, we should expect the mines to repay the subsidies? And so by temporary, is this meant to be kind of a temporary loan? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Yellowknife North, Minister of ITI.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the relief in the form of property taxes and foregoing the property taxes was a one-time, one-year for this year relief measure that the Government of the Northwest Territories, under direction of Cabinet, took. It is not a long-term solution. It is a right now an acknowledgement of the global diamond market and the cost of doing business in the Northwest Territories, and also the significance to Northern employers, to Northern workers that the diamond mines play. Thank you.
Minister of ITI. Final supplementary. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the minister also said in her statement that these subsidies are not about supporting mines, they're about supporting people. So if that's the case, did the minister consider investing the $15 million directly into retraining and supporting the workers or the Indigenous Development Corporations so they can be better prepared to transition once the mines do close, whether that's a year or a few years from now? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Yellowknife North, Minister of ITI.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm all about return on investment. I think that we should be putting our dollars into places where we have significant amount of investments. In regards to the dollars that we did invest in the diamond mine relief, we end up with over $2 billion in annual exports, 1,000 jobs for Northerners, joint Northern spend of almost $900 million and $69 million in tax revenues annually to the GNWT. So I feel like that's a pretty darn good investment. That being said, I do agree that we do need to have education because education does last forever, unlike our diamond mines, which we do know. In regards to the diamond mines, they all employ apprentices, and all of the companies that contract with them, a significant number of them employ apprentices. They're doing workforce development. The Indigenous Development Corporations also have workforce development plans and are working on exactly what the member is talking about. And without the dollars from the diamond mines, they can't sustain that. They're also working on social programming. They're working on housing developments. And so really this is more than just supporting diamond mines. This is supporting Northerners, this is supporting Indigenous businesses, and this is in support of our future economic development as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Member from Minister of ITI. Oral questions. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Premier welcomes the Western Canada Premiers to Yellowknife, there's a lot of attention on us today around some recent decisions that Premier Smith in Alberta has made. Most notably, I think my colleague spoke to some of the issues related to trans and non-binary folks. And let's also talk about the constitutional crisis that the Premier is walking into for some reason. She's cut the threshold for constitutional initiatives half in her province and is gunning towards a referendum on separation for whatever reason. Has the Premier discussed this with Premier Smith and what the result would be for the Northwest Territories if we lose a vital connection to Alberta, because of course that's our logistic hub. It's a huge economic link. We really can't do without it. So has the Premier had those discussions, and do we have a position on it as a government? Thank you.
Member from Range Lake, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our position hasn't changed on the issues the member is speaking about. If there are medical services that are no longer available in one jurisdiction, we will work with another jurisdiction to ensure that residents receive those medical services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, it's more than medical services. It would be all services. But that's good to know that we'd find someone else. Mr. Speaker, this is a controversial decision. First Nations and Indigenous leaders have risen up to say that it's not okay. It's not something they'll allow on their watch. Will the Premier support those voices if there is a court challenge at some point? The GNWT can be in a position to intervene. Even if you can't make that commitment today, will he at least support those voices that are calling for Indigenous rights to be respected in the province of Alberta? Thank you.
Rangeley, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's a hypothetical question, and it should be directed to the Attorney General. So I won't be answering it on both those fronts, but I'll say that our track record here in the Northwest Territories on Indigenous rights speaks for itself. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Premier. Final supplementary. Member from Rangeley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I caught myself there. So I'm looking more for a political commitment from the leader of our government to support the voices of First Nations in Alberta in their struggle to keep this country together and oppose a very dangerous precedent that is being floated by the government of Alberta. Thank you.
Member from Rangeley. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure exactly what the member is speaking of in technical terms. He's looking for my support for events in another jurisdiction. I'm unclear on the parameters that he's talking about. What would I be committing to support? I'm focused on the Northwest Territories. I'm the Premier of the Northwest Territories. We have strong relationships with Indigenous governments. We are moving to a future where the territory will be covered by settled land claims and self-governing Indigenous nations, and we are continuously working towards that end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Oral questions. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, prior to 1993, the Government of Canada provided funding to CMHC on an annual basis so that they could provide funding to the GNWT through the NWT Housing Corporation, where they built at least 600 homes per year up to 1993 from approximately 1988 or so. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, with the Prime Minister Carney coming into power now, he's asking to build he made a commitment to build 500,000 homes per year. My question would be to the Premier, will the Premier seek a commitment from the Prime Minister to ensure that federal housing funds flow directly to regional Indigenous governments here in the Northwest Territories, and will he ensure that Indigenous leadership is meaningful included in the federal territorial housing discussions so that decisions impacting housing in Indigenous communities are reflected in their priorities? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Toonaday-Willety. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For many years, it's been the policy of this government to support direct payments for housing funding to Indigenous governments from the federal government. So we will continue to do that. I'm happy to support Indigenous governments in their advocacy to the federal government. I never want to stand in the way of funds flowing directly to Indigenous governments. So I want to make that very clear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Premier. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And some of the programs that was provided back in the early days was programs like the Home Ownership Assistance Program, the Home Ownership Improvement Program, the Senior Citizen Home Repair Program, Emergency Repair Program, and we also provided public housing. And so, Mr. Speaker, it would be, will the Premier advocate for restoring and reinstating these programs in partnership with the federal government of Canada and ensure that these funds for the delivery is directed to regional Indigenous governments? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Toonaday-Willety. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a number of those programs. I won't say I'm an expert on past programs from previous decades, so I don't want to speak too much into that, but we are advocating to the federal government when it comes to housing. We're happy to see money go to Indigenous governments. I'll also mention that the GNWT provides a lot of social housing in the territory, and we also need our own funds. So we are doing that as well to advocate for a renewed agreement with the federal government where we'll see increased funding to support social housing at the same time that we are supporting Indigenous governments to access funding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Premier, final supplementary. Member from Toonaday-Willity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, some of the policies that are in place in government now sometimes don't really meet some of the community needs. So, Mr. Speaker, with CMHC funding set to expire with the housing NWT by 2038, there's an urgent need to build capacity with Indigenous governments immediately so they can deliver and manage their own housing. Will the Premier work to ensure that the annual federal public housing funding, along with the operational and maintenance support from CMHC, is directed to regional Indigenous governments so they can begin building and maintaining their own public housing units? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Toonaday-Willity, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is why it's so important to settle land claims and implement self-government agreements so that Indigenous governments can begin providing appropriate social housing if that's what they wish to do. In the meantime, the government of the Northwest Territories provides social housing, and so we need to ensure that we have an agreement with the federal government that is supporting our ability to provide that social housing. And like I said before, at the same time, we'll support Indigenous governments in their aspirations around housing as well, and we'll do that by going to Ottawa together and advocating together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Oral questions. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over 1 year ago, just a few months after Alberta's government announced proposed changes to gender-affirming care, Northern Mosaic Network reached out to Minister Semler to get answers to questions the community members shared with that organization about how their access to gender-affirming care would be impacted. So, Mr. Speaker, can the minister explain what actions she has taken since then to address the concerns of our 2 LGBTQIA plus community members on access to safe health care out of territory? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Slave, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first, I want to assure NWT residents that healthcare services for transgender individuals, including children and youth, will continue to be available within our health system. If the Northwest Territories clinical experts in transgender care cannot meet the needs of the residents, a referral can be made to an out-of-territory practitioner. Steps I've taken is to ensure that concrete steps to safeguard access for NWT residents are put in place. I've directed my department to secure alternate out-of-territory care pathways for these individuals, meaning when a service is not available to Northwest Territories residents in Northwest Territories or Alberta, physicians will refer patients to a jurisdiction where they may continue to receive the care they need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Health and Social Services, member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for that. Mr. Speaker, considering that the Alberta Premiers visited to Yellowknife for the Western Premiers Conference, the Northern Mosaic Network has reached out to both the Premier and the Minister to collaborate on an action plan to address the state of trans health care for NWT residents. And I'm so glad to hear that she has directed her department to secure alternative pathways. However, will the Minister also commit to meaningful collaboration with Northern Mosaic Network on trans health care for NWT residents? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Great Slave, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, yes, but I'd like to explain a little bit more. So we have an established working relationship with the Northern Mosaic Network. They helped draft the Northwest Territories guidelines in 2020, and in April 2024, representatives from ECE met with Northern Mosaic Network to discuss and review an update of those guidelines, which will incorporate new research that they're conducting with the University of Manitoba. And we look forward to seeing the recommendations that come from this work, and I am fully committed to continuing our collaboration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions. Member from the Deitcho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has noted the importance of stabilizing operations in enterprise. Can the Minister of MAC explain what goals or target community services would have to meet in order for the department to be satisfied that the governance and financial issues facing the hamlet have been resolved? Thank you.
The member from Deitcho, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I would like to say that You know, it's a last resort to put a government under public administration with the GNWT. And we've worked with the community many times throughout the last few years, including before our assembly started, in order to maintain the government structure of enterprise. So this isn't a new issue. This is a long-standing issue within the community. So right now, we're working with the public administrator who's in place right now to determine an action plan on what our processes are and how we're going to move through that. So one of the main issues is getting a hold of the accounting processes. There has been no documented accounting procedures done in quite a while, and we don't have any financial statements after 2023-2024 season or year, sorry. So the goal right now is to determine what our path forward is and how to get to where the community is back on track again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Municipal and Community Affairs, member from the Deitcho.
Thank you. Can the minister discuss what steps the new administrator is currently taking to enter into municipal service agreements with Hay River and other NWT communities to deliver or operate services, public utilities, or facilities and enterprise? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from the Deitcho, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, we are a little bit too early to determine that. We just had our administrator put in place. So it's currently the actions that he's doing right now is going through the operations of the community, finding out what resources are needed to operate. Currently, right now, they are operating as they were, so they've already had agreements in place, or some agreements in place. So those are currently being worked on, and then obviously if there's any more that's needed, he will work those out in order to satisfy the community needs. So again, it's just he's in the state of processing what exactly is needed and have a plan coming out with that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs. Final supplementary, member from Deitcho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can the minister say whether there is a timeline or, timeline for when residents should expect an election to be held for the Hamlet of Enterprise? Thank you.
Member from the Deitcho, Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So currently, like I stated, with the new administrator put in place, the assessment is developing a work plan on how we move forward with the community and the governance structure. Currently, at the time, it's all new, so there is no timeline at present. However, I will say that I would rather have the residents govern their municipality than us, and the sooner we can get to that point and have a well-oiled machine of enterprise back in order, we will have that in place and ready for them to take over. Our goal is to have some public meetings here as soon as June, and I hope to also be a part of one of those public meetings. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Municipal and Community Affairs. Oral questions. Member from Mofway.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, summer is approaching, and many of our young people will be on school break. So talking about drug crisis right now is appropriate to send a message to the young people in our communities. So, Mr. Speaker, I noticed there is a vacancy on the board for the representative for North Lake. Can the Minister of Justice speak to the current capacities of the Legal Aid Commission? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Mofway. Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll have to take that question as notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Justice. Oral questions. Member from Sawtooth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following up on my statement, my questions are to the Minister of Infrastructure. Can the Minister of Infrastructure share with anticipation whether there will be a there will be a Sahtu regional sailing season, what actions are taken with or by MTS and Cooper barging discussions. Merci.
Member from the Sahtu, Minister responsible, or Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I want to thank the member for acknowledging some of the hard work that's been done by the infrastructure staff over the last little while. Obviously, navigating climate change is, and no pun intended, navigating climate change is not an easy task, considering we have no control over that. However, the actions being taken by the MTS, or infrastructure staff and MTS, has many plans and layers of it to hopefully have a successful navigating system, and it's really hard to tell right now what that might entail due to the fact of we don't know what the water levels are going to be like. So we are closely monitoring those water levels, and we're closely monitoring the ability to get barges and tugs up and down the river, and those plans have been underway for a while now. So our goal with MTS is to have somewhat of a barging season, which includes a smaller section of barging from Dooley Crossing, as stated earlier, to the Sahtu area, and potentially from north to the Sahtu area. So looking at many options. And so the goal is to work with another barging company to try to get fuel and freight into the Sahtu region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Infrastructure, member from the Sahtu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that information. I'm glad to hear that there is preliminary sailing season, hopefully a sailing season discussions. The Minister answered my next question, so I'll skip that one there and add another couple more. If water levels permit, will the Minister, to avoid and detect hazard areas, will there be a water depth surveillance crew accompanying the barges? Thank you.
To Minister of Infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. MTS wouldn't be navigating the Mackenzie River without buoys set up by the Canadian Coast Guard. So that's a safety thing, and that's something that we'd, like he said earlier in his member statement, we don't want to risk the environment. So we will wait for Canadian Coast Guard to put up the buoys in order to navigate the Mackenzie River. And from previous briefings, I know that they're really anticipating getting out there and looking at our waterways. We know some of the trouble spots of getting through, like the Fort Providence Rapid area, Grumbler, or the Sansu area. So there's quite a few areas that are concerning, and Coast Guard would go out there, navigate, and send smaller vessels through first to determine whether or not they can get the buoys out there. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Infrastructure. Final supplementary. Member from the Sahtu.
Two more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for that information there. Moving along to my next and final question here. Is there, can the Minister share the information how much cargo is booked for the Sahtu, whether it's fuel or dry or modular units? Thank you.
From the Sahtu, Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is a very good question. I don't know if I have the details handy yet. I know that they were waiting for a key point to determine whether or not we would even be accepting freight in Hay River to put on the barges, or whether or not they would hold off. So we'd have to wait to determine to see what we're getting. So I'll have to get back to the member to let him know what freight's for the area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Infrastructure. Oral questions. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, not to preclude the work done by the member for Yellowknife North, but a long-standing concern I've heard from nurses prior to my time being a member is that of staff-to-patient ratios. And so my question to the Minister of Health and Social Services is whether or not she's willing to commit to do a review to staff-to-patient ratio to address a long-standing concern of frontline healthcare staff, starting with Stanton, and present those results to all members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Great Slave. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a conversation that I've been having with my staff, and you know, what happens across the across Canada. There are some jurisdictions that do have this, you know, and then there are areas that they, you know, there might be some indifference that they don't, you know, they don't put it out in public, so we don't have that access to the information. But what I can commit to is that looking at, and I don't want to do a broad across the board, but what I would commit to is working with my staff to figure out in some of our higher priority areas, especially within our hospital settings, and looking at rural and remote, you know, we can take a look at this and see where we, you know, how we compare to the jurisdictions that do have public information out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Service. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's really great to hear. Is there any way that staff will be involved in that process in terms of frontline staff? Because that's really who is bringing these concerns to the fore. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Great member from Great Slave. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I appreciate the work that the frontline staff have been raising, and you know, we are hearing them. Again, I want to acknowledge that our system and our processes aren't as fast as they want them to be, and so we do hear you. We have plans in place. How with this, you know, I will take, like I said, I will take this back with the department and with NTHSSA, because that's our operating arm, and look at you know, what we have across, you know, and then, you know, the feedback from the staff could be that, you know, when we look at, and I'll just say some of the patient ratios that I've seen online, and then I compare them to our inpatient beds and our staffing, we can't use that as, you know, and that's why I think what you're saying is we need to hear from the staff, because if we have staff that we have a lot of casuals that are filling, you know, vacancies and things like that, it may impact how, you know, the pressures that are on them. So, like I said, I'll take this back, and we'll come up with a process on how to do this work, and you know, and even bring this back to members to share, you know, what the ideas are and what we're going to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Final supplementary. Member from Great Slave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for that. So last week, when Standing Committee on Social Development heard from the Public Administrator, he spoke of a people strategy. Will this strategy be ongoing and a living document so that this piece around patient-to-staff ratios can also be incorporated? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Great Slave. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the people strategy is to be released, as I get the fulsome, you know, I had the highlights of it early on before it was being drafted. So as soon as I have the people strategy draft, you know, and I'm more than willing to send, you know, as soon as I have it to Standing Committee on Social Development to be able to, you know, have a conversation with them of what's in that document. Thank you.
Minister of Health and Social Service. Oral question. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think my statement spoke for itself earlier. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Has the Health Department done any work to date on regulation of counselors and psychotherapists under the Health and Social Services Professions Act that she can report back to the Assembly? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Frame Lake. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time, our efforts are being currently focused on bringing current regulated professionals under the Health Professions Act. We are not considering counselors and psychotherapists at this time. Psychologists are being brought under the Health and Social Services Professions Act. However, this is not an issue specific to the Northwest Territories. From the information that that I've gotten from my team is that nationally there is not one consistent approach to regulating counselors. However, for our counselors that are employed by Health and Social Services Community Counseling Program, We do have program standards that state that if they're able to be registered with the professional bodies, that they should do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Health and Social Services, member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just following up on that response, I heard a should, but that doesn't sound like a requirement to me. So first of all, can the minister just clarify for the House about that? Is that a requirement or is it simply a recommendation? Thank you.
Member from Frame Lake, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. He'd have to be more clear when the response of which part of that I said should. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Service. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope that this is simply a clarification of the second question as opposed to my third, but I'm simply saying the minister said that something along the lines of councillors under one of their programs, I can't exactly remember which one off the fly, but should register with a regulatory body. I was trying to determine if that is a requirement or simply a suggestion. Thank you.
Member from Frame Lake, and I'm going to say it's a clarification. Member from Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and sorry, yes, and it does say should, and that means that we encourage all our staff, and there are different ways that that they can, under the different pieces in Canada, the Canadian Association, some can register through that, but then there are some social workers that are professional counselors, and so they would be under the Health and Social Services Profession Act. So there are some clinical counselors that are being regulated under our Health Professions Act, and that being social workers, but if they're not social workers and they're just clinical counselors, and this is the area where we have many different levels of social work, so this is something that I would be considered to have more discussions with the member, and and to kind of find a way to move forward with the things that he's looking for. Thank you.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Final supplementary. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, and I appreciate your indulgence, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the minister has highlighted exactly the problem that I'm trying to raise today, and that is that we do not have a regulated counselor and psychotherapist under the Health and Social Services Professions Act. Will the minister commit to investigating the potential for regulation of counselors and psychotherapists and report back to the Assembly? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Frame Lake, Minister of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I would only be, as I said before, what we are focused on are currently bringing in regulated professionals under the Health Professions Act at this time. And so that would be, at this time, I'm not going to be considering that, but it's something that we can discuss further in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Health and Social Services. Oral questions. Member from Yonge Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Education, Culture and Employment, and it's with respect to vaccinations. Recently, Yellowknife had an outbreak, had to close school through the community network, making sure that the messages got out there so parents didn't drop their kids off at school, and hence the measles outbreak happened and went through the process. And we all know measles can be very dangerous. And as well, lastly, Mr. Speaker, there are requirements for example, school-aged children to get their vaccinations. But the question more I'm going towards is focusing on teachers and administration and employees. Mr. Speaker, given the recent event and potential risk that could be applied to our loved ones, is the department willing to consider a vaccination a mandate, in other words, must requirement for staff and administration at educational facilities that, again, take care of our loved ones? Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Yonge Centre, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's not currently a vaccination mandate for teachers outside of, when we went through COVID, and there was expectations around that. That was under the direction of the CPHO, the Chief Public Health Officer, and so our education bodies and our schools work very closely with the Chief Public Health Officer in events like this. and we ultimately follow the direction of the Chief Public Health Officer to ensure that we are aligned to protect residents and children. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the risks of that can happen with, for example, measles, and given the most recent example of what's happened by shutting a school down, Mr. Speaker, why wouldn't the department look at considering the option of legally requiring staff and teachers to be vaccinated? Thank you.
From Yellowknife Centre, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this would be, a much larger conversation. I'm certainly happy always to take conversations like this back. I would also say that, recommend that people reach out to health and do their vaccinations, and then we can work together to avoid situations like this. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Final supplementary. Member from Yellowknife Centre.
I appreciate the shout out to public health. They do a great job and they certainly help ensure that people are ready. But Mr. Speaker, we are talking about the Department of Education, not the Department of Health. And furthermore, we're talking about schools, not that. So I would be curious on what the minister meant by some type of conversation. Is she willing to take it back to her department to look at, is this something we could do? Is this something, how could it roll out and how could it be envisioned? And certainly in the sense of timing, because I wouldn't expect something like this to be done before the end of May. And I would say something like this does require a fair bit of thinking and transition, as well as acceptance if it was part of a process that the government ended up moving forward. So what could that look like if the minister would be willing to take that back to her department to evaluate or consider? Thank you.
Senator, Minister of Education, Culture and Employment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, obviously there are many other factors here. First of all, I would need to speak with the Department of Justice to find out if something like this, where the limits are. This is also a question for the public service and to find out kind of what the limits and expectations are of the public service. At this point, Mr. Speaker, outside of a public health emergency being declared, neither the Department of Education, Culture and Employment nor education bodies can mandate vaccinations or proof of vaccination for school staff. Thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture and Employment. Oral questions. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's been some very high-profile reporting on information breaches related to this government recently. You can look in old filing cabinets, old desks, and find names, dates of birth, addresses, contact information, employment history, financial and credit card information, and healthcare numbers. So, and also we hear other reports of staff snooping in medical records. The state of our information, our record system, our management of this information seems to be in disarray. Can the Minister of Justice, who has the Access and Privacy Office within his department, explain why this is continuing to happen? Thank you.
From Range Lake, Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a very sensitive area, and I'm unable to respond to the member at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Justice. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I know it's sensitive, which is why I'm concerned about it, and certainly the Information and Privacy Commissioner is concerned about it as well. There's been a number of recommendations in these reports, including a clean desk policy when these things get done. Is the minister working on implementing the recommendations of the Privacy Commissioner and implement things like clean desk policies so this does not happen in the future? Thank you.
Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the department is reviewing the recommendations of the report, and I can't specifically answer that question at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Justice. Final supplementary. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the minister know when he'll be able to answer that question? Because I think the public would like to know. Thank you.
Member from Rangeley, Minister Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will follow up with the department and provide that information to the member before the end of the week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Justice. Oral questions. Oral questions, member from Toonaday-Willety.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's not often we get together here in the Northwest Territories, and especially in Yellowknife, with Western premiers. And I just wanted to just continue on with housing. My question would be to the Premier, if there's a way, if he could continue to work with the premiers and the 3 territories ministers, premiers, to really push the housing issue for the Northwest Territories and Operation Maintenance dollars, if you could look for support and then continue to build on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member from Toonaday-Willety. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's been significant advocacy by all the provinces and territories regarding housing funding. That was a prominent theme in this last federal election, and the federal government has been responding to that with some significant announcements and plans on housing. And so we'll continue to push that advocacy forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, the Kaitra region, this year we got funding to do home ownership inspections in our region, and thank you to I want to say mercy to the Minister of Housing for helping out. My question to the Premier, though, is that once this report is going to be done by this fall, and the chiefs from the Kaitra would like to work together with the Premier to bring this report to the Prime Minister and ask for further funding for home ownership repairs in our region. Thank you. So my question to the Premier, can you help us out with Indigenous governments to knock on doors in Ottawa? Thank you.
Member from Toonaday-Willety. Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We can always work with Indigenous governments to knock on doors in Ottawa, but there's more than just the Prime Minister in Ottawa, and there's more than just the Premier in the Cabinet, so I'd have to defer that question to the Minister of Housing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Premier, final supplementary. Member from... Oh, sorry. Minister responsible for housing.
Mr. Speaker, I think this in question is important because the work they're doing in the Acacho territory, talking about the conditions of homes in their communities, this is something that housing is doing as well through our territorial housing needs assessment. Again, we've done the quantitative assessment, and now we're wrapping it up with the qualitative assessment that's hoping to be done by fall of 2025. And with that engagement, we've reached out to all Indigenous governments and Indigenous leadership in communities, asking if we can have conversations about this assessment. So it's important work that we hope to see results, and then we bring that to Ottawa along with Indigenous leaders and talk about needs in communities for housing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister responsible for housing and NWT. Final supplementary. Member from Toonaday-Willety.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yeah, I'm really happy to hear that because it's very important on those 2 items. One is to restore and reinstate the home ownership program, and also to go to Ottawa to push for funding for the home ownership repairs in our riding. And I'm happy to hear that we could probably work together with the KHO chiefs along with the GNWT leadership to go to Ottawa and knock on doors together. So I just want to say thank you, and just a statement. Thank you.
Colleagues, I do not want to have statements. I want questions. It's question and answer period. Please, you want to say thank you to the ministers, do it after session. Thank you. Oral questions. Oral questions. Member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are for the Minister of Finance, who's also the Minister responsible for the public service. So on May 5th, the Ministers of Finance and Health and Social Services issued a joint press release announcing that the government is embarking on a second phase of changes to the Public Service Act that will focus on modernizing Section 41. That's the section that defines bargaining units and prescribes who will be the bargaining agent for public servants. First, can the minister explain what is the objective of this modernization effort that the government is embarking on? In other words, what is the problem with Section 41 that you are seeking to solve? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Yellowknife North, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, modernization of the Public Service Act has, in its whole, been happening now over many years. There's been much work done in this space, and we already are at a stage with most of the Act such that it is already in legislative drafting and will be coming forward to the House later this year. That is with one exception, and that was with respect to Section 41. That section, of course, the members already detailed, does involve bargaining units and is one that is a little more complicated, and so we left that aside from the rest of the Act. What it is it does speak to a charter right with respect to freedom of association, which has a couple different parts to it. You have the ability to organize as a group what kind of your group of union or of employees you may want to be when you decide to collect yourselves. You have that choice, and you can make that choice independently. And then also, Mr. Speaker, would be about ensuring that that group of employees can make a determination about who would represent them in a collective agreement proceeding. So again, that choice would be independent. That choice is one that it's about choice and independence reflective. Right now, our section prescribes who the group of employees shall be and who their bargaining agents shall be. And so it does appear that since the time, some time ago, when this Act was initially drafted, it is now out of step with what seems to be the direction of the Charter, and so we are looking to bring that in line. A commitment was made to members of this Assembly earlier this year that we'd bring forward an LP to make this change, and we are looking to getting that work underway. Thank you.
Mr. Finance, member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for setting out a clear goal for the amendments to that section. For clarity, is the government committing to establish a Labour Relations Board or similar mechanism to certify and decertify bargaining agents during the life of this Assembly? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yellowknife North, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the commitment I want to make really is one of fixing the problem that I just described in the last answer, and it may well be that it's that the solution is a Labour Relations Board. It may well be that there's some other entity or organization that can conduct the bargaining or that can conduct a certification if that's what is ultimately required. I'm hesitant, Mr. Speaker, to say here in too much detail where we may end up because we haven't necessarily gone out. Well, we haven't gone out yet. Certainly not to our unions currently that are in the Northwest Territories, Union of Northern Workers or PSAC, to discuss with them. They have a lot of expertise, quite obviously, are more than simply stakeholders in this matter and want to have a time to engage with them, as well as with the employees who are the public servants that this will be impacting. So again, wanting to fix the problem that we had laid out, but wanting to do that in the right way, which is one that involves an opportunity to have discussions and engagements with those who are impacted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Finance, final supplementary, member from Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so I understand the government has clearly committed to collaboration and consultation with existing bargaining agents, such as the Union of Northern Workers, during its work to modernize Section 41 of the Public Service Act. The question is, for the minister, does the government need consent or permission from the UNW in order to complete changes to this section of the Act? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Yellowknife North, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, no, the government doesn't require consent or permission from other parties or including from the union to change the Public Service Act. That said, Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, the union here certainly is more than merely a stakeholder, so certainly ensuring their involvement is quite important to making sure that we have a piece of legislation that is the best possible version of itself right now. And also, Mr. Speaker, there is certainly, I should make note, an expectation, an obligation on the government, a legal obligation on the government in the current Public Service Act that there not be any changes to that Act, which governs the relationships and governs the bargaining process when the parties go into bargaining. So once we have a notice to bargain, there is a provision in there where the parties can agree on consent to continue to work on changes such as what we might be contemplating here, or as we have already done in the rest of the Public Service Act. But again, Mr. Speaker, it's not consent or permission, but certainly is one where we want to make sure that we are, maintaining our relationship, maintaining fair bargaining, and maintaining our duty to engage in bargaining fairly and upholding the law as it is now in Section 41. And Mr. Speaker, I believe the timeline we're on and the relationships that we have will allow us to do that. Thank you.
Finance. Oral questions. Member from Yelney Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday in my email, I got a response from the Minister of ECC regarding some caribou herd populations. I certainly was appreciative of the response, but my question, of course, that stirred the other question, which was about wastage. And so I see some numbers and information which I appreciate. My question, of course, being more specific, which is what is the department's strategy given the most recent news stories about caribou wastage? How are they dealing with this? And public education can only go so far, so they must be able to do other types of things to address these types of problems, because it seems to be a significant sin every time we hear about more caribou wastage. Thank you.
From Yelney Centre, Minister ECC.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd also agree that, it's very troubling to see the wastage of the caribou over the past season. In 2024, we had 0 instances of wastage that were reported, and in 2025, we currently have 11 investigations on the go. Our strategy is, we put joint communiques out over the winter, engaging with the local Indigenous governments in a collaborative effort to ensure that we were messaging respectful harvesting. We've also recently engaged with Indigenous governments across the region to have meetings throughout the summer to address some of the challenges and concerns with the wastage and disrespectful harvesting on the winter road. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment Climate Change. Member from Yelney Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was kind of hoping I'd also hear some information regarding enforcement. Now, I wouldn't be asking for the spy trade techniques from enforcement officers, the James Bond hiding behind a fake tree or something, but the truth be told is there must be some fundamental issues with meat wastage. In other words, why is there any time spent on trying to diagnose why is this such a problem, or why are people choosing this approach as opposed to treating the animal with respect, or finding a way to deal with it better? I guess what I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
From Yelney Centre, Minister of Environment Climate Change.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Recently in some meetings that I've been involved, a big part of our conversation with the Indigenous leaders was about respectful harvesting and ensuring that traditional knowledge is passed down from generation to generation, and that our elders are being recognized for that valuable information, and that they're passing it down to the younger hunters, and using the tools within their community to communicate the importance of the caribou, how it is part of our traditions and our heritage, and really focus on the importance of that message. And certainly that is also happening through the engagements out in the land, as part of how our officers interact with hunters, as well as ensuring that we're recognizing that traditional knowledge is a big part of how we communicate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment Climate Change. Member from Yelney Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not to sound silly in any way, it's serious, which is we're not born with a gun in our hand, nor with the knowledge to how to use it. It's a learnt skill, whether you call it that or not. You're not born with a knife in your hand, again, similar. So when you look at caribou dressing and those types of things, can the department maybe look at holding for community clinics, in other words, in regions and over the summer or in the fall, of saying, this is how you do these types of things, and this is more engagement in the sense of hands-on showing people, because, maybe folks, I'm not here to answer all the questions, that's your job, but I can't answer all the questions in the sense of my assumption is sometimes people just don't know what to do and some people don't care. And it's the people we want to enforce on that don't care, but some people just don't have the skills. Is there a better way to get hands-on through community clinics, engaging elders, engaging wildlife officers for a better relationship? Thank you.
Thank you, member from Yellowknife Centre, Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, agree very much with what the member said. I think that engagement with the communities and ensuring that those traditional practices, how to properly use a gun to hunt safely, to respect the animals, how to properly deal with all of the usable parts of the animal, ensuring that if you're as a harvester aren't using those particular components, that you're sharing with your other members of your communities, and ensuring that that's happening. And a big part of that learning effort is also, there are many programs that ECC has, Take a Family on the Land, Take a Kid Trapping. There's other different programs that support community hunts, etc., that are resources that the community and Indigenous governments can access to provide these opportunities across the NWT. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Colleagues, our time for oral question is up. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to Rule 7.27, I received follow-up information for the following oral questions from the first session of the 20th Assembly. Oral questions 428, 432, 433, 440, 449, 453, 466, 479, 485, 513, 514, 522, 526, 540, 541, 546, 549, 562, 567, 569, 571, 575, 576, 578, 612, 658, and 659. Mr. Speaker, these follow-ups will be printed in full in today's Hansard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Oral questions. Oral questions. Written questions. Written questions. Return to written questions. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a return to written question asked by the member for Range Lake on March 6, 2025 regarding the productivity of operating rooms at Stanton Territorial Hospital. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to oral question asked by the member for Montfouille on March 3, 2025 regarding title transfer issues in the Clecho region. Mr. Speaker, I have a return to written question number 16-20(1) asked by the member for Frame Lake on March 13, 2025 regarding environmental liabilities, inventory, and securities held by the Government of the Northwest Territories. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Clerk. Returns to written questions, returns to written questions. Replies to Commissioner's address, replies to Commissioner's address. Petitions. Petitions. Reports on committee on the review of bills, reports on committee on the review of bills, reports on standing and special committee. What? Member for Frame Lake.
Mr. Speaker, your committee would like to report on its consideration of Bill 17, Municipal and Community Affairs Statutes Amendment Act. Bill 17 received second reading in the Legislative Assembly on February 10, 2025, and was referred to the Standing Committee on Government Operations for review. The Standing Committee completed its clause-by-clause review of the bill with the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs on April 22, 2025. Mr. Speaker, the committee reports that Bill 17, Municipal and Community Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, is ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Frame Lake. Member from Frame Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your committee would like to report on its consideration of Bill 18, an act to amend the Partnership and Business Names Act. Bill 18 received second reading in the Legislative Assembly on February 10, 2025, and was referred to the Standing Committee on Government Operations for review. The Standing Committee completed its clause-by-clause review of the bill with the Minister of Justice on April 22nd, 2025. Mr. Speaker, the committee reports that Bill 18, an act to amend the Partnership and Business Names Act, is ready for consideration in Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Frame Lake. Reports on standing and special committees. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, your Standing Committee on Public Accounts is pleased to provide its report on the review of the 2023-2024 public accounts and commends it to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from January to April 2025, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts Committee publicly reviewed the 2023-2024 public accounts. Public accounts are financial statements that show the financial results of the Government of the Northwest Territories for a fiscal year. The fiscal year of the GNWT is April 1st of one year to March 31st of the next calendar year. Committee recognizes the new public accounting standards will be implemented on April 1st, 2026, affecting the 2025-2026 fiscal year. Committee has therefore not recommended changes to the GNWT accounting practices at this time, as committee appreciates that the adoption of the new standards will be comprehensive and take time to implement, which will impact some government reporting entities, or GRE. Committee wants to acknowledge the efforts made by staff in the Office of the Comptroller General and the Office of the Auditor General in preparing the 2023-2024 public accounts. This report notes new recommendations the committee believes have merit and deserve consideration from the government. The public accounts are financial statements that show the financial results of the GNWT for a given year. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts was appointed by order of the Legislative Assembly in February 2024 to review and provide follow-up reporting on the public accounts. These reviews assess the credibility of the government's financial position and provide accountability for the government's financial results. Committee examines whether public money was spent prudently and as the Legislative Assembly originally intended. The 2023-2024 public accounts were released by the Minister of Finance in November 2024 and tabled in the Legislative Assembly in February of 2025. These are the second set of public accounts the committee has reviewed during the 20th Assembly. On January 28, 2025, the committee held a public meeting for its review of the public accounts for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, which included staff from the GNWT's Office of the Comptroller General, OCG, and the Auditor General and Financial Audit Team from the Office of the Auditor General of Canada, OAG. Following its January hearing, committee invited staff from the Department of Environment and Climate Change, ECC, the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs, MACA, and the OCG to a public meeting held on April 3rd, 2025 to answer further questions about environmental liabilities and local capacity. This April meeting helped committee finalize its review of the 2023-2024 public accounts. Committee has identified recommendations in these key areas, as well with respect to the transparency of Heritage Fund and public-private partnerships for P3 reporting. Committee appreciates the collaboration of the Auditor General and OAG representatives from GNWT departments who attended public meetings and responded to committee requests for information, and particularly the Comptroller General for helping to ensure a timely and comprehensive review of the public accounts from January to April 2025. Background. The public accounts are required to be prepared annually by the government in accordance with the Northwest Territories Act and regulations and the Financial Administration Act and regulations. Section 35 of the FAA specifies that the public accounts must be prepared by the Comptroller General and approved by the Minister of Finance. The FAA requires the public accounts to be tabled in the Legislative Assembly. The Legislative Assembly then refers the public accounts to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts to review and report back in accordance with the Northwest Territories Act. The financial statements are audited by the OAG each year. The Auditor General gives an audit opinion on whether the public accounts are in accordance with the PSA standards and relevant acts. The Financial Statement Discussion and Analysis, or FSDA, included with the consolidated financial statements, discussed below is a standard reporting practice that includes a summary of the results of the fiscal year. These notes are not audited but are reviewed by the OAG. The financial health of the government is measured by 3 indicators: sustainability, flexibility, and vulnerability. The FSDA also provides Roman numeral I, an overview of the territorial debt and the NWT economy in comparison to other provinces and territories. Roman numeral II, financial trends, and Roman numeral III, reporting on the GNWT's fiscal responsibility policy. The public accounts currently have 4 sections. Section 1, consolidated financial statements and financial statement discussion and analysis. The consolidated financial statements must include all government-controlled organizations, brackets, all GNWT departments, revolving funds, public agencies, and other entities that make up the government reporting entity, or GRE. The result is an overview of all financial activities under the control of the government. These statements show Roman numeral I, the cost of providing programs and services, Roman numeral II, cost of financing debt, Roman numeral III, an annual surplus or deficit, Roman numeral IV, consolidated budget, Roman numeral V, revenues received in this year, and Roman numeral VI, assets and liabilities of the government. Section 2, non-consolidated financial statements. The non-consolidated financial statements only include information relating to GNWT departments. These statements relate to the information that has been approved by the Legislative Assembly in the main estimates process. Section 2 gives detailed supplemental schedules that provide additional information when assessing the activities of the GNWT department over the fiscal year. Section 3 and 4, boards and other consolidated entities. Sections 3 and 4 include information for all education bodies, health boards, public agencies, and other related entities, which are considered part of the GRE. Audited financial statements of each entity are to be completed within 90 days of the entity's year end. Recommendations. Environmental liability reporting. During the January and April public meetings, committee asked many questions about environmental liabilities and liabilities for sewage lagoons and solid waste sites. Committee sought further information about how the GNWT determined, reviewed, updated, and prioritized the list of environmentally contaminated sites, which stood at 231 at the end of fiscal year 2024. These questions and the rate at which sites are remediated inform the relationship between the actuals reported in the public accounts and the appropriations in the main estimates and supplementary estimates, given that the Department of Finance allocates $2 million each year to remediation efforts. Committee has requested a table from the Department of ECC listing the specific information that is known about individual sites, whether they have already been remediated or approved for remediation and appropriated. Committee also discussed whether it would be beneficial to include more information about environmental liabilities in the public accounts, as appropriations and actuals frequently differ. The following recommendation aligns with committee's view that the public accounts can be a helpful tool for MLAs when they are reviewing the main estimates. Recommendation 1, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts therefore recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories Office of the Comptroller General add information in the public accounts indicating how long an environmental liability has been on the books, with a corresponding summary of the known information about sites in the notes and discussion section. Improving local capacity. In the 2023-2024 public accounts, committee noted that MACA lapsed 26.2% of its budget, or $101.1 million during the last fiscal year. Committee learned that these lapses are largely related to carryovers from the federal Investing in Canada infrastructure program, other projects that were delayed due to the 2023 wildfires and evacuations, in addition to general issues with staffing and local capacity across communities. As MACA lapsed a similar portion of its budget in the 2022-23 fiscal year, committee wanted to follow up with departmental officials about the causes behind large budget lapses in consecutive years. Committee agrees with the department that local capacity should be improved, projects that have allocated funding should begin, and lapses should decrease over time. Recommendation 2, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts therefore recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories create a work plan to improve staff retention within the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs to help the flow through of funding, which will be reflected by an overall decrease in departmental lapses recorded in the public accounts. Heritage Fund and P3 reporting. Legislation requires the GNWT to publish the public accounts within 9 months, which the GNWT met this year by publishing in November of 2024. According to Section 35.1 of the Financial Administration Act, the requirement to report in the public accounts does not apply to the Northwest Territories Heritage Fund, the fund. However, the board established by the Northwest Territories Heritage Fund Act, the Act, under Section 5.1 brackets 1 and brackets 2, is still required to table an annual report on the fund in the Legislative Assembly no less than 150 days after the end of the fiscal year. The Act requires statutory review every 10 years, which the Standing Committee on Government Operations will complete for the 2026 fiscal year. The Department of Finance publishes the annual financial statements of the fund as part of the public accounts, Section 3, each year. Committee has asked whether the inclusion of financial statements for the fund in Section 3 meets the requirements of Section 5.1 brackets 2 of the Act concerning the production and tabling in the Assembly of annual reports on the fund, particularly with respect to the question of whether they meet the requirements of, quote, annual report, end quote, as defined in the GNWT's planning and accountability framework. Annual reports generally include analysis of both financial and non-financial activities conducted throughout the year. Committee acknowledged that reporting on the fund is timely. However, transparency and accountability could be improved. Specifically, the inclusion of more detailed information, particularly management discussion and analysis, would provide the public with a clearer overview of the fund's operations over the past year and how this performance may shape future decisions. Recommendation 3, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts therefore recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories, the Northwest Territories Heritage Fund Board, and the Office of the Comptroller General enhance the transparency and accountability of the reporting on the Northwest Territories Heritage Fund in the public accounts by including more information about the fund's activities, investments, management discussion, analysis, as well as an overview of operations from the previous fiscal year. During the 19th Assembly, the Standing Committee on Government Operations recommended that the GNWT, quote, classify the Stanton Legacy Project as a public-private partnership, P3, end quote, in its report on the review of the 2018-19 and the 2019-20 public accounts, which committee reiterated in its report on the review of the 2022-2023 public accounts. The GNWT maintains that the government is unable to accept this recommendation as the Department of Finance has determined the most appropriate accounting treatment on the public service accounting standards. A P3 is a collaborative arrangement between a government and a private sector partner to deliver public infrastructure or services. In a P3, the private partner typically takes on significant responsibilities, such as designing, building, financing, operating, or maintaining a facility over a long-term contract. While the GNWT will not report the Stanton Legacy Project as a P3, committee feels that there should still be increased transparency so that the public has a sense of what happened and why the government reassumed responsibility for risks associated with the Stanton Legacy Project, which was originally intended to be offset through a P3 arrangement. Recommendation 4, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts therefore recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories either classify Stanton Legacy Project as a public-private partnership, P3, which was originally procured as a P3 project, or establish in the FSDA the point in time when this ceased to be the case. Conclusion. This concludes the Standing Committee on Public Accounts report on the review of the 2023-2024 public accounts. Committee looks forward to the government's response on how they will implement these recommendations. Recommendation 5, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts recommends that the Government of the Northwest Territories provide a response to this report within 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from Range Lake. Member from Range Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the honourable member for Nunakput, that committee report 22-20(1) Standing Committee on Public Accounts report on the review of the 2023-2024 public accounts be received and adopted by the Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member from Range Lake. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Member from Range Lake.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the honourable member for Nunakput, that pursuant to Rule 9.4(5)(a), the Government of the Northwest Territories table a comprehensive response to this report, including all recommendations within 120 days or at the earliest opportunity subsequent to the passage of 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
From Range Lake. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Yay. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Reports on standing and special committees. Reports on standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to table the following document. Note to file Mackenzie Valley Review Board meeting with Government of the Northwest Territories staff. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Tabling of documents. Mr. Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following document, Yellowknife Shelter Information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Tabling of documents. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following document, additional information for written questions 16-20(1), environmental liabilities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. Tabling documents. Minister of Health and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following documents. 2 documents, the Structured Decision-Making System for Child Protection and additional information for written question 14-20(1), operating room activities for Stanton Territorial Hospital. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Health and Social Services. Tabling of documents. Member from Yellowknife North.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following documents. First, a proposal for a private member's bill, an act to amend the Public Service Act. And secondly, the Nursing Collective Agreement and Association Functions Survey done by the College and Association of Nurses for the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Yellowknife North. Tabling of documents. Colleagues, pursuant to Section 102.9 of the Legislative Assembly and Executive Council Act, I wish to table a supplementary report of the Northwest Territories Integrity Commissioner about costs related to a complaint by Jennifer Patterson that Mr. Richard Ajurkin, member of the Legislative Assembly for Tuna-Day-Willowday, breached the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly's members of Code of Conduct. I wish to table a list of deceased Northwest Territories World War II veterans. Table of documents. Table of documents. Notice the motion. Member from Range Lake. Nope. Nope. Okay. Notice the motion. Notice the motion. Motions. Motions. Notice of motions. First reading the bills. Yellowknife North.
Mr. Speaker, I give notice that on Friday, May 23rd, 2025, I will present Bill 26, an act to amend the Public Service Act, to be read for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member from Yellowknife North. Notice of motions for first reading the bills. Notice of motions first reading the bills. First reading the bills. First reading the bills. Second reading the bills. Second reading the bills. Consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters. Consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matters. Reports of the Committee of the Whole, reports of the Committee of the Whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Orders of the day for Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 1:30 p.m. Prayer, reflection, minister statements, member statements, motions, returns to oral question 666-20(1). Recognition of visitors in the gallery, acknowledgements, oral questions, returns to written questions, replies to the Commissioner's address, petitions, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, tabling of documents, notices of motion, notice of motion for first reading of bills, first reading of bills, second reading of bills, consideration in Committee of the Whole of bills and other matters, report of Committee of the Whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day.
Mr. Clerk, this House stands adjourned until Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 1:30 p.m.